Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. So good afternoon. I'm about to get started. All right, I'll try. All right, thank you.
Just say shut up in the most polite manner.
I'm politely trying to get everybody's attention. All right, today's date is March the 7th, and the time is now 4:03 p.m. And I would like to call to order the Children's Services Council of Leon County meeting. We do have members in our audience today. Thank you all so very much for being here. There will be opportunities for comment on the agenda. So if you have a copy of the agenda, you'll be able to see where we have a space for a public comment. If you would like to make a public comment, please see Ms. Clay over here at the very end, and she will collect your comment card for you. Once again, council members, to keep us in order, I'm asking you all to please raise your tent in order for us to be recognized in order to speak. So with that, Ms. Clay, will you please call the roll for us?
Judge Miller,
Here.
Mr. O'Brien,
Here.
Mr. Jones, Mr. Hannah, Commissioner Cummings,
Here.
Mr. Mitchell,
Here.
Mr. Watt, Dr. Glenn.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum, so we are going to get started. Thank you so very much, Ms. Clay. All right, everybody, on the council members, you have received the meeting packet. It was distributed. For our guests, the meeting packet was available on the website, so I do hope you all had an opportunity to take a look at that. There is one addition that we're going to make to the agenda. Under section 7, which is special presentation, we will add a section of 7.1, which will be a grant opportunity. So we'll have an opportunity to add that to the agenda. So that's the only change that I have that I want to call out that we're going to add to the agenda. And if there are no other changes, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Chair, I will move the agenda as amended with the 7.1.
Sure, second.
All right, we have a motion for Mr. Mitchell, a second by Ms. Cummings. And so I will, by consensus, the agenda has been approved. All right, thank you very much. All right, it is now time for general public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any comments for general public, from the general public?
We have general public comment from Ms. Emily Friend.
Ms. Fritz, welcome, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Long time no see, sort of. I have read the letter that you guys received from the county administrator that suggested that you replicate the funding practices of the CHSP. And I'm recommending that you not adopt those practices. I've been critical of this body several times, but I will tell you, you do a much better job than the CHSP does. I've served on the CHSP evaluation team several times, and they have improved over the years, but there's a low level of accountability, and there's a culture that everyone gets a trophy. And so please don't allow yourself to get sucked up into this bureaucracy. If you dip your toe in that water, you could get sucked up into it. I attended all the CSC planning committee meetings, and I talked with some of the members during the breaks. And I asked one of the committee members if the CSC was going to be a replica of the CHSP. And he said, absolutely not. And I thought, okay. And he said that the CHSP is not effective, and that these are his words, not mine. He said that CHSP was not effective and that the CSC would have more accountability. I spoke to another committee member and who also said the CHSP was not effective. And I said, well, wouldn't it make more sense to make the CHSP better than create a new government entity? And he said, well, yes, but that's not going to happen because the CHSP is so political. Again, those were his words, not mine. In 2018, when the county commission had its marathon meeting on whether or not to put the CSC, excuse me, too many acronyms, to put the CSC on the ballot, there was a discussion about the county commission providing more children's services and not creating a new entity. That was discussed many times, and the county commission decided that no, they didn't want to be in charge of more children's services, and that it was very important to have an independent CSC. So the county made a conscious decision for the CSC to be independent. The school superintendent is not here, but the school district is independent of the county commission. So I doubt if the county commission tries to tell the superintendent how to run the school district. The judicial circuit is independent of the CSC. So I doubt if the county commission tells judges how to run their courtrooms. So you are independent. Please do not let another body tell you how to do your job. Most government entities fight like hell to retain their independence. So please retain yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clay. I appreciate that. Ms. Clay, any other comments?
There's no additional.
No other public comments. All right, thank you very much. All right, let's move forward to agenda item number 5, which is the consent agenda. So in our packets is a copy of our consent agenda. Oh, you have a copy. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell, I did not see you.
So, I'm glad you're here to speak to this, and I don't know that. So I got the letter, well, I know our funding practice, and I'm very confident and very comfortable with our funding process and the scrutiny that is applied to all applicants and sort of all steps that we take to spend taxpayer dollars. In fairness, I do not know the CHSP's funding practices, but for someone to suggest that we act like them suggests to me, if I'm going to get comfortable with that there's more scrutiny with CHSP. And based on everything I've heard, it seems like there's less scrutiny. And I'm not sure that Mr. Long, I'm not sure I understand what his letter means. And so I didn't know really where to bring this up in the meeting. And I hate to put, Ms. Green on the hot seat. And I'm not asking you to speak for Mr. Long, but I'm hoping that you've had conversations with the county that would explain this letter and its mysterious appearance.
So if I may, I'd like to defer to Councilmember Cummings, because this came out of the county commission, and I think she's in a better position to explain it.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. This did come out of a vote from the county commission, not trying to tell the Children's Services Council what to do or how to do. But at our meeting, we had a room full of service providers for our children. And they were there because it was being proposed that this children's programs that are being funded by CHSP be shifted and told to come to the Children's Services Council for funding. And of course, there's a lot of discontent and uproar from that particular segment of service providers because they're not sure if their programs will continue. They're not sure if the children and the families will continue to be funded if the county and the city dump the funding to the Children's Services Council. Okay. And so what we decided to do, or what we proposed, is not telling anybody what to do, but what we recommended is that the Children's Services Council look at this group of service providers and see how we could accommodate them on a 2-year basis, how we could carve out the funding from the county level and the city. I know the county annually, I think, contributes about $350,000. So how we could carve out the amounts that they would normally receive from CHSP so that their services for children and families wouldn't stop. And if we would still be able to fund those programs that we have already decided that we would fund. Okay. Am I saying that because you were at the meeting? Okay. And what we recommended is that we just pretty much have a moratorium for 2 years to allow the Children's Services Council to look at this segment of the service providers to see how we can have a continuity in the service. If we don't adopt some type mechanism so that they would have continuing services, I'm afraid that it would have a ripple effect that would go all the way down to employment of service provider staff. It would have a ripple effect as far as some families, single parents not having provisions for daycare for their children, which in fact, they would have to stay home with their children and they would ultimately lose their job. It would just have a ripple effect all the way around. So that letter from Vince is just asking that we look at it in conjunction with the committee, who is composed of the county representative, city representative, and our executive director, to see how we could accommodate this segment of the service providers. Okay, now, and let me say this too. It's a policy decision on the part of the county. The county can vote to not fund CHSP on the level that we fund right now. They could do it. And then those service providers would be out there, families would be floundering. So it's just a recommendation that we look at it. And it was based on my recommendation at the county meeting that we not just throw those service providers over here, knowing that they wouldn't be funded based on the programs that we have now and the criteria that we use. And so we got like a 2-year moratorium to just work on it and see what we can do.
And so if I may add, Chair Cummings, in her capacity as county commissioner, is exactly right. That was the conversation. And so basically what the letter is asking is that we look at it. And so my suggestion is that since he is asking for us to look at it, the commission is asking for us to look at it for fiscal funding year, fiscal 27, we have some time to get through your priorities. And then we can bring this to the council to really have a robust discussion to determine how you want to move forward.
I do see you, but I do have one quick question. I'm assuming that there would be a formal presentation from the county to us about, no, that's not the intent.
You got the letter.
I know, but, okay,
Now, if I may, the county is just one party to this. The city, the county, and the Children's Services Council makes up that group.
but the letter was the formal request. I was expecting.
Yeah, it's a formal request to the Children's Services.
And I am aware, very well aware of how the CHSP process works. And we did have lots of conversations with the city, the county, and us. We were very clear about how we do our process and our priorities. But again, the county made the recommendation according to what their staff felt needed to happen for them to have the ability to serve, to cover the services that they need to provide. That being said, the county commission directed Mr. Long to ask us that. And so the letter says to consider replicating and funding those areas that hit children, youth, and families. So in my professional opinion, it is up to this council to have that discussion in response to his request. And we will provide you with the information you need to have the robust discussion and make a decision.
I'll see Mr. O'Brien and then I'll come to Mr. Mitchell.
Just a comment and more of a reminder to me and all of us that we have limited funding. We have very specific objectives. I do have concerns on organizations because it's CHSP, it's United Way, all those. There are a lot of organizations that are out there and they are looking for support. And I'm not saying that they are not worthy organizations, but it's not our responsibility to keep organizations afloat and fund them all. Our responsibility is to secure certain objectives for the benefit of the children of our community. And what I want to make sure we don't do is whether they give money or not give money or whatever else, that we don't dilute what we do to the point of not being effective. And so when you start throwing stuff on top, other stuff on top, and everybody starts looking at you for being the resource for driving their missions, I mean, I have concerns about it just getting way too many areas, way too many organizations, and really not end up achieving anything but basically just being an inch deep and a mile wide. I'm probably not articulating
No,
that.
I understand exactly what you're
It's just, you start getting like this, I just get concerned about these conversations.
All right, let's go to Mr. Mitchell and then I will comment.
So first of all, I watched the original county commission meeting and the follow-up county commission meeting. And Commissioner Cummings is elected countywide, so she's my commissioner. And I was very proud of my commissioner for taking a strong stance on this issue. And Commissioner, I mean this, I sat there and I thought, I know exactly what's happening here. What's happening here, what the attempt was to pull a bait and switch is how I saw it. That the taxpayers created the Children's Services Council to fund certain things with a very specific mission. And the county, like every organization, is struggling for funds these days, saw this as an opportunity to, whoa, hey, we've got other needs. Why don't we take the funds that we're dedicating to kids right now and move them to the other needs? And I'm not questioning the value of those other needs. However, I can't sit by and watch a bait and switch. And that's why I was so proud of my commissioner for speaking up, our commissioner for speaking up. As it relates to Mr. Long's letter, I was a little confused as to why we were getting it, but now I understand. The fact that we have 2 years to consider this, I appreciate the fact, Sika, that you say, we'll kind of deal with what our priorities are and then we'll get to this. I've now been on this council for 3 years. Anything that's got a little controversy to it seems to take us a little while. So I'd like to go ahead and dive right in, the water is fine kind of thing, not drop everything else, but begin to focus in on this issue. And I just will make, not that I can't change my opinion, but I have some pretty strong feelings on the accountability levels that we have set at the CSC. And while Mr. Long's letter suggests that we adopt another set, I just suggest that we have 2 years to teach those who are currently receiving funding how to adopt ours, which is a higher standard. And again, I'm not crazy enough to believe that we got it 100% right and there isn't room for for some adjustments. And to Commissioner Cummings' point about making sure that services continue. Maybe they're not the exact same, providers, maybe providers join together. But we now have, Mr. Watts isn't here, but Mr. Watts was the chair of the committee that procured services. It gives us a dashboard that tells us whether our programs are working or not, and I don't want to lose that. Anyhow, so one, Commissioner Cummings, thank you so much for fighting. I think it's the right fight. And I think to do anything different would have, would lose the confidence and the trust in the voters here at every meeting. 66% of the people voted for this. I do not want to let them down. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments on that. All right. I did hear your request to address this a little sooner rather than later. I do want to make sure we do focus on our priorities because those are priorities that we set that we said we were gonna focus on. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I would like to make sure we focus on our priorities. While in the meantime, I will ask the staff to look into this and bring this forward so that we can consider it. We do have a little bit of time, so I don't want to lose sight of the timing, but I don't want to lose focus on what we're supposed to be doing.
Ideally, so staff has already kind of discussed some timing. Ideally, after we get through trim, we can start having this discussion in October. It gives us plenty of time for you all to have that discussion, have anybody speak that you want to speak.
Maybe a workshop, I want to make sure I'm using the term correctly, but a workshop where we allow the community, including those who showed up at the county commission, to come and just tell us what they're thinking. And it doesn't have to be, if those who can make it, and we just listen. Again, there is, for all of us, an education process, and I am not arrogant enough to believe that I know everything. And oh no, CHSB doesn't do this and we do it so much better. No, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, and we have the space to make that happen.
We've got the
right?
space and the time.
That's a good idea.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, wonderful conversation. Let's move forward. All right. We are on agenda item number 5, the consent agenda. So I hope you all have had an opportunity to read the full consent agenda. We have the minutes from the January meeting, our special meeting that we had in February, the financials for January, the Finance and Budget Committee meeting, and then also the Executive Director's report. So let's see, hold on. Okay, yeah, all right, so one thing that Ms. Cummings brought up at the last meeting that we had, the vote for the FRC management recommendation, the staff did confirm that the vote was 5-2, so we just want to make sure that that is documented in our records, that was the vote in favor of the CHS. So now, if there are no other changes that we need to address with regards to the consent agenda, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair.
I move acceptance of the consent agenda with the corrections.
Okay, I hear a motion by Ms. Cummings. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a second from Mr. Cummings, Mr. Mitchell. I apologize. All right, I apologize. Okay, and with that, I am assuming there's nothing consent. I know. All right, so we are moving forward with the consent agenda. Thank you very much. Mr. Rowe, we are at the agenda where we are ready for a general counsel update.
And I have no update to report.
No updates to report. All right, no worries. Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
I'm sorry, Matt, did we vote on the consent agenda?
But I just, that was by consent.
Unanimous,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, all right, great. We are now going to hear a special presentation about the family strengthening evaluation. So I am going to ask you to introduce our speaker, please.
So we have representatives from the team that is helping us with the evaluation process, particularly with our family strengthening programs, family strengthening and parent education programs. So we have with us Gary Van Landingham, who's director of the Askew School of Public Administration and Policy, Florida State University, as well as his colleague. I don't know if they're gonna tag team, but we'll have about 10 minutes. And then we wanna leave about 5 minutes in case you all have questions.
And before we go to Dr. Van Landingham, I think I said that right.
Landing.
Please talk about why we're doing the evaluations. That's very important to me and I want to make sure everybody understands.
Absolutely. So the only way we're going to know if our programs are achieving the outcomes that we want them to achieve, but more importantly, that the programs are implemented with those outcomes in mind, is by having them partner with a professional in the evaluation space. And so that is why we retain Dr. Gary, as I will call him, to have an engagement with each of our family strengthening providers, such that they can begin really looking at how they formulate and memorialize what they're doing to ensure that they are meeting the contract outcomes. I think you'll find it very interesting, because of course we don't know what we don't know until we know it. And so it has been very eye-opening to have him and his team work in this space, because the funded providers that we work with A, have been very appreciative, and B, are really beginning to understand that it's not just about providing service, but ensure that you're getting the outcome on the other side.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I am so excited that you're here today, so thank you. And if you would do me a big favor, just scoot over this way a little bit, please, so I can see your slides. All right. Yeah, thank you very much.
Anybody else's way? Hopefully not. Well, thank you so much. I'm Gary Van Lanningham, and I'm director of the Askew School. Dr. Schrader, and I are both recovering evaluators. We have spent many decades working in the space. My misspent youth was working with Florida legislature, running its program evaluation office. Dr. Schrader has many years of experience as a practitioner as well before she joined our school. So this is an area we care passionately about. And can we get to the next slide, please? And what we've been asked to do.
Excuse me, Gary, I'll be your slide.
Oh,
Right
you
there.
got that? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Our charge is to provide technical assistance and training to the providers who received your Family Strengthening Parent Education grantee, with the goal of helping ensure that they can both implement those programs the way that they are supposed to be implemented, and to create strong internal accountability systems so that they can become learning organizations that track what they're accomplishing on the ground and use that to improve their operations and give you the data that you need to be able to say, we are moving the needle in tangible ways on our critical goals. And we have a team of 4 of our faculty who are working over the next year with these providers. There we go. Just to give you sort of the big picture as we think. There's really 4 critical things that have to happen for you to achieve your mission. And this is true of any organization that's trying to move the needle in a tangible way out there. One is to target funding towards evidence-informed programs. And there's 2 elements to that. One is know what you're trying to achieve, have specific goals in mind, and then target that money to programs that have a good track record of achieving those goals. That is incredibly important, and I am thrilled that the CSC understands that and is all over this. Most funding organizations are not.
Can I just say hallelujah? I'm sorry. I just wanted to get that out. I know. Yeah, just say it. All right, thank you.
Yeah, most organizations, I would say, the state of Florida, that's true in every state, and I've worked in, I think, 30 states over the course of my career. They don't know what programs they're operating because they don't track them in the budget. It gets rolled into the appropriation base. They have very little information what each of those programs are accomplishing because they don't track that type of information, and their systems then run on autopilot with inertia. That if you ever get funded by the state, you're probably funded forever unless something amazing happens. You're taking a very different and appropriate way of moving forward, and that is to be celebrated. Would that the state and other organizations were taking the approach that you would, we would have a far better system out there. Second, make sure those programs you fund are being delivered the way they're supposed to happen. A good program that is implemented badly is not going to work. And if they're not serving the right population, they are not training their staff appropriately, they are not delivering services the way they're supposed to be delivered, it's more than likely not going to work. And there are lots of examples out there where that has been a problem, even in really good programs. So best example of that, Washington State went to their evaluators and said, we want to do something to help our juveniles who are starting to get into the criminal justice system. And they said, okay, well, the state is currently spending about $90,000 for each child we send to a delinquency program. Instead of that, there's a good program out there that's based on cognitive behavioral therapy approaches. It only costs about $3,000 a person. And the difference between that and what you're doing now is that this is a community-based program and it provides intensive services to the child in their community. And we're not only serving the child, but their family, because a lot of kids act out because of problems at home. This program has been shown to be very effective. We would recommend that you do that. Washington State said, great, thanks. And they implemented that program statewide. 2 years later, they came back to their analysts and said, hey, smart guys, we put a lot of money in this program because you told us it was a good deal. Tell us if it's working or not. One question. Well, they went out and did a good study looking across the state, and they said, we've got bad news and good news. The bad news is statewide, this program is not achieving any goals that we thought that with this program would work. And the good news is we have then found out why. And in half of the state, this program is having more impact than we expected because they're doing this program the way it's supposed to happen. The other half of the state is not doing this program the way it's supposed to be doing. They're not hiring people with the right training. They are not supervising them. They're not delivering the programs. And in some cases, they're actively harming the children. And the legislature said, well, sounds like we need to make sure this program is being done the way it's supposed to be done. And so they put a lot more emphasis on fidelity. That is incredibly important. So that is going to be a key thing that we're going to be working with these grantees to help make sure that they understand what the key elements of these programs are and that they will have a process in place to make sure it's being done. The third area is to track what these programs are actually accomplishing, to enable them to collect the high quality data, not only on processing things like, are we serving the right number of people, but are things moving in the right direction? And then the fourth is to bring that information back to the CSC so you can show that, yes, these programs are having the impact in the community, which you have promised to Leon County residents. Our work is on items 2, 3, and 4 with these programs. So we've been doing this in 3 ways. First, we provided a series of workshops to these providers covering all elements of evidence-based policymaking, helping them explain the importance of using evidence, the importance of fidelity, and what makes a good logic model, what are good performance measures, and how do you collect that information, and how do you use that information on an ongoing basis to manage your programs effectively. Because the goal is to help them become learning organizations so that periodically they say, not just have we done everything we need to do, but what is happening because we are doing that. So they need to have a system where that information is being discussed on an ongoing basis so that they can make any midterm corrections that need to be happening. We did those workshops in October. We are now in the process of sitting down with them in a series of workshops and saying, let's look at your logic models, let's look at your theory of change, let's look at the performance measures you have and make sure that this is something that is going to be meaningful. That has taken time. It has taken a series of workshops. We've been working with them now for about 3 months. We think that they are close to being able to report, or at least have the measures that they really need to be able to deliver to themselves and, more importantly, to you. One of the things that I want to bring to your attention is that to get some of the community level impact data that you need to have, such as not just are we serving these kids, but are they now doing better in school? Are they staying out of trouble? Are the families actually getting better and more functional with less abuse and neglect? The CSC is going to have to help them get some of that data because that's going to require getting data from the school system, from children and families, from the law enforcement community, and the individual providers are not going to be able to get that data. That's going to require setting up memorandums of agreement, privacy considerations, data confidentiality provisions. The CSC can do that. The individual providers cannot. So that is something that I want to put on your TBA lists because to get that data, they're going to need help to get that because the schools are not going to set up without the superintendent being here. They're not going to want to do that for a bunch of little social service providers that they cannot regularly monitor. I think the CSC has a role in doing that. So that is ongoing. Our goal is to have this done by the end of the month and to give you a report of where we think they are. That will include updated theories of change, updated logic models, and updated measures, including the ones that we think that you're going to have to help them collect for that community level information. Then we're going to provide ongoing mentoring to the grantees for the rest of the fiscal year. And that's going to be sitting down with them on a monthly basis saying, how's it going? Are you able to collect the information that you're getting? How are you doing on your fidelity monitoring program? And help them make sure that they're able to be in the position of giving you the data that you need. So that's going to be ongoing for the next 7 months now. So that is sort of where we are with this. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I'm happy to entertain any questions. Mr. O'Connor.
A quick question. You gave us a to be determined or to be assigned.
Mhm.
Where do we find the resources to be able to accomplish that?
I've been having conversations with my dean. I think this is something that FSU can and should play a role in. Because we have a service mission. We've got staff, we've got grad students who need things to do. So I think that we can build an ongoing relationship with the CSC to help you get the information that you need to be able to continue your good work.
That's a great answer. I like that.
So our TBA became your TBA. We're curious.
Gary, look here, Dr. Gary, if you allow me one, if you allow me to add, so we are actively working on those memorandums of agreement and understanding with the school district, DJJ. It is a process, let me tell you. But we are also looking to other CSCs who have been able to do that, so we can kind of mirror and know exactly who to contact. And it would be the identified information, and then we are able to match that up with the data that the programs. So we are working.
So there's a lot of moving pieces on this, but we are happy to help as this moves forward. I can't promise for the dean what he can commit yet, but this is something that he is interested in doing. And I think the university as a whole wants to become more engaged in communities.
I just want to say, I'm beyond excited that you all are doing this for us. I appreciate that. I feel happy now because, you know, we have no proof of these programs are working unless we have the evaluation, unless we have the data. And it's very important that we track that and monitor it, and it should guide us as to where we put funding in the future and things like that. How often will we hear from you? That's what I want to know. So I know that you all have just now, you know, trained the grantees. You're getting their metrics in place, but what is the cadence in which you give us a report as to this is what we're seeing? This is what the data is telling us. How often will we be in dialogue?
Well, we're only 2 miles away, so it's.
Okay, so we can call
Yeah.
you at any time.
You call us, yep.
Yeah, and so right now it is on a per program engagement. That being said, though, we're looking at, as Dr. Gary said, a longer engagement relationship. And I think once we kind of see how this one not ends, but how it unfolds, we will be better equipped to say at what intervals we will provide you with that information and updates. I would imagine as we get into a groove of funding programs and getting the data and our programs are knowing how to use SAMAs and more importantly, we're knowing how to pull that information out and get you the reports. It would be something that probably could be anywhere from every 6 months to quarterly. It would just depend on what and it's also dependent on what the program is measuring. Because some measurements, you're not going to be able to measure every 3 months. So we're still working on how that will look.
I'm so happy. Thank you very much.
Oh, Dr. Van Landing, have you done anything similar with we were talking earlier about CHSP with any local funding, Leon County local funding organizations sort of doing for them what you're doing for us?
We have had an ongoing low-level engagement with the city and county on CHSP for, I think, 3 years now, trying to nudge them to become closer to the way the CSC is operating. It's a very different animal. One of the things that we have been able to achieve is we went over all of the metrics that they were getting and developed a set of common metrics, which all of the CHSP providers now have to include in the performance measurement set. That will allow them to roll up at least some of the metrics they're getting. Because in the past, you may have had 10 different agencies all reporting on educational achievements, but doing it very differently. So you couldn't consolidate what it meant. Some people would say grades are better. Some people would say they were able to become promoted. Some of them would say something else. And it was so much apples and oranges that you couldn't tell what was happening. They're still a long ways away from how the CSC operates.
So Madam Chair, if I might, we're talking about perhaps doing a workshop, and I hope that Dr. Van Lendingham, you and Dr. Schrader find a couple of those grad students to perhaps send to the workshop. Because if in fact the CSC is going to take on additional responsibility, and if the county and CHSP is going to sort of assign us this task, and we have 2 years to essentially train the grantees that are not CSC grantees, but CHSP grantees, we have 2 years to train them to get ready to start acting like us. Your services would be amazing. And so maybe you'll be able to accomplish both, training us well and training them well.
We are very open to that. That will take a shift in terms of how they currently get funded to match yours, and I think that'll be important, as well as to get them to think along the lines of the goals that you are trying to achieve.
Yes.
Because that's a key difference between your goals and the city county goals. Yours are much more targeted.
It would be so unfair that 2 years from now, they wake up having no education on how we expect. We've got this responsibility, and we're like, sorry,
City building.
right.
That's exactly what
But
that is, yeah.
But to your point, I think we are postured as some of those CHSP organizations have come to us for funding. Some have been funded and some have not. But I think, to your point, we are postured in helping to change the paradigm of how they are looking to be funded. So just to use your words, bring it up so that as a community, we have these common metrics and we really know where we stand. So yeah, we'll be sure to have.
Thank you
them.
both for being here.
Floored.
I'm pumped.
And I have to say, because I had a brain thing with Dr. Schrader, because I actually met with Dr. Schrader first before we even met with Gary. I was here, maybe about 4 or 5 months, something like that. So yeah, so we've been working on this for a little while now.
Miss,
Just very briefly, I just want to commend staff and Dr. Van Lanningham. I'm going to call it this partnership, this collaboration, because I think it's very well needed. But at a couple of our meetings, they did mention that the CHSP had generated some metrics. I'm sure you guys were involved with it. So I think those groups are, they're getting ready for the mindset to know that we do things differently. And if in fact we have to absorb some of that service provision, I think that they're on the groundwork right now with you guys' help. I think it will be awesome because we will have some measurement tools and we will be able to look at outcomes and look at how effective those other programs are for our children and families and whatever. So I just appreciate you guys and appreciate staff for having that foresight, to bring you guys in.
And the only other thing I want to comment, I think it was your slide number 2, where you talked about one of the first things that needed to happen was that programs like us, funding agencies, really needed to establish targets and get bold goals. And that's one thing I've talked to Sika about. And I think that it would be helpful to have you all to engage in those conversations with us. What are reasonable targets? What are achievable? What are stretch targets? What should we be looking at? And because if that's not clear, you're not going to hit anything. So lots of times I think we need to be hearing from the experts about how to set those targets in a meaningful way, what that level should be. And I'd love to have you all be a part of those conversations, because what I don't want to do is set targets where y'all are like, that's not reasonable, or there's no way we could really measure to that. So please, if we could find a way to engage them in that conversation, that'll be great.
Just one of the cool things about the moment we're living in now is that there have been thousands of evaluations that have been done across the country for the last 40 years. So we know what works and how well they work. And there's a great organization out there called the Washington State Institute for Public Policy, or WISA. And they've built a benefit cost model that uses that research base to say, here's how much these individual programs will move the needle based on our population. And then to give you the return on investment. Now, not only like, here's the impact on the ground, but here's what's worth it that to us in terms of taxpayer savings, because we're avoiding crime and we're avoiding having to have kids repeat grades, as well as societal benefits. Because if a child is able to graduate, then their income is going to be higher. And then there's victimizations that are avoided in the broader community. And to be able to put a dollar value on that just changes the paradigm of funding and how we approach those decisions.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? All right. Y'all were gutsy. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Thank you. All right, I'm excited. Let's move forward. That's great. All right. We did add an additional agenda item, which is a grant opportunity. Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. And Sika, thank you very much for taking my call on Monday night, Tuesday night, whatever it was. This is a little unusual it's a little unusual for me to want to spend money. Let's start there. There is an opportunity that we have, that this community has to submit a grant for up to $10 million for a program. And I'm going to let Mrs. Green talk a little bit about the program, but it is a program that, if introduced to Tallahassee and Leon County, I think would make a huge difference. The part of applying for the grant, it's a federal grant, it requires a governmental entity, which we don't qualify, but Leon County School District does, and they will be submitting the application. And it also requires paying someone to write the grant. The cost for writing the grant is $30,000, of which I believe they have commitments in hand for $20,000. And I'm not suggesting that we make up the $10,000 difference, but rather make up a $5,000 difference. And there's a method to my madness for both reasons. One, I think 5,000 is what we provide for sponsorship opportunities if you want to sponsor a conference or a function. So it's consistent with that. The second thing is that this is a last minute add to the agenda. And it being a last minute add to the agenda means that there really was no, notice to the public that a council member was going to come forward and say, hey, I want to spend $5,000. Putting that aside, we do have a bucket of money specifically that we've already voted on, specific to grant writing. So we certainly have the $5,000. We certainly have a vehicle by which to use it, and it is something that I believe in strongly, and that it's something that the CSC, by participating in paying for the grant application, will also have a seat at the table as once these grant dollars come into Leon County, how best to administer them.
What's the
So-
purpose of the grant?
I'm sorry.
Maybe I missed it, but what's the purpose of the grant?
So I'm gonna let Sika talk a little bit about the program, but essentially what it is in layperson's terms, as opposed to smart woman terms, is this is a program where when a woman is 28 weeks pregnant through post-delivery by about 60 days to 90 days, there is a doula, not a nanny, because I've been corrected. It's a doula that goes in and works with the mother and the family to sort of help them understand what to expect when this baby is delivered, and after the baby's delivered, making sure that they, are getting their shots and helping with breastfeeding and things that I didn't do with my 3 boys, but someone did.
Can we arm these doulas with books
And
resources for?
yes,
So I'm gonna do this. Because it goes much deeper than that. So the grant opportunity is for the Institute for Child Success that is responsible for what's called the Hello Family model in Spartanburg, South Carolina. It's a pay for success model. So they use private and public funding to basically help reimburse or pay for the success of the program. So it can start in the prenatal stage, but it actually is a whole kind of continuum of care. I am not totally familiar with it, but I have heard several presentations. But what the grant would do is bring in the money to cover that pay for success model. So it would be cover a feasibility study, which I think comes in at about $250,000, to make sure the community is right for it and that there are investors that are willing to invest in the model here. So the $5,000 that Mr. Mitchell is saying would come out of the contract funds that we have for grants. It doesn't require a vote, but we wanted to bring it to you so that our constituents would understand that we're not just giving away money, but rather investing in the feasibility of a possible model that can come in and it can have all of those components. So it's not as simple as, and I don't mean to call the commissioner or the council member simple, but it's not.
it's been done before. You're in good company.
It's not as simple as just the traditional doula. It actually is a whole continuum of care that walks along with that.
We can marry this up with the FRCs.
Can marry it up with the FRCs, can partner it up and as a way to expand what Healthy Start is doing with their community doula program. So at the very least, the return that we get for that $5,000 is exponential.
Immediate child brain development or early on child brain development, that's what? Absolutely. I know you said it doesn't require a vote, but do we want to vote on this?
No,
No.
She has the money.
I just thought,
Wow.
we don't need to vote on it.
I will,
Want it,
I will
it's
small
made.
record as strongly
Who's writing
endorsing this.
So the grant
Who's writing?
the grant is being written by the institute.
by the institute.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the Institute for
Okay.
Child Success would write the grant and they would be the grant administrators for it. And if I can go a little further, we'll get into the concepts that we want you guys to take with you and read through, give us feedback. But the model can fit into this plan that you all have by way of me, so I mean you all in the me sense of the word, have decided that this community needs to come together to develop a full early childhood plan with all the funders coming together, all deciding this is where we want to go, and each of us deciding where our funding is going. I did have a conversation with Council Member Mitchell, and what we agree is, yes, $9 million for us is a lot. It won't do everything, but if we couple it with everyone else's money and resources, we should be able
Yeah.
to service those 3,000 babies that are born
Yeah.
every year in some way. So now I don't have to talk about that. So anyway,
So just to
yeah,
summarize, we are contributing $5,000 towards the $30,000 needed to write the grant.
Yep.
And if they are successful, then we
we are a
into
stakeholder in
that
that.
process. Right, that
Absolutely.
makes sense. Okay, good.
So
And
we,
because it's budgeted in our budget for grant writing, budget is already approved, we don't have to vote on it.
absolutely.
Okay.
I just, more than anything, as I said to C, I'm like, look, I don't want you going out on a limb without the council knowing this. And so,
Great length.
thank you for putting it on.
Fully endorsed.
agenda, Madam
That's a
Chair.
good thing.
Thank you. You had a question, comment, Mr.
No, you just say, if we're not voting on it, but I will go on record as strongly endorsing.
Absolutely. I think, I haven't heard any disconsent here, so I think we're good to move forward. All right, thank you very much. All right, appreciate that. Okay, guys, moving forward, agenda to item number 8, summer enrichment programs. Ms. Green.
Yes, so council members, you have in your packet the list of programs that moved forward from the application for the RFA for the summer. At the request of Dr. Glenn, your list is de-identified. However, the full list, we are on page 12. Page 12, and it's the right-hand 12, is de-identified. And one of the reasons we did that is because as we are moving in a space where we are raising the bar and the strenuency that we required for this funding, we want you to look at the program focused area, look at the total score, look at the number of kids, and look at the budget as you make your decision versus looking at the names of the program. Now, we do have the names of the programs, of course, and the public already has the names of the programs because we posted all of it online in accordance with our procurement process. So with that, oh, one more thing. We do have some funding options because we know that this council likes for us to come up with some options. And then you can kind of review those. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our procurement manager, Ms. McDale, to kind of walk you through.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for the opportunity to share this. We did have a very robust discussion about all of the applicants. I do want to go on record of saying that the criteria, the initial eligibility criteria for this year's applicants was much higher than in the past. Earlier today, Ms. Green gave a presentation to one of our community partner groups that was filled with partners and potential providers, and she talked about this concept of duration and dosage. The whole purpose of us making this investment in summer enrichment is specifically to address this concept of summer slide. What we know is that during the summer months, children, especially those that live in disadvantaged neighborhoods or in poverty, that they slide back in terms of their math and reading acquisition and other skills as well, by up to, I think it's like 2.8% more than their counterparts from more affluent neighborhoods. Based on that, summer school is what we sometimes call it, or summer camps, these different enrichment opportunities is what we really want to look at. According to the National Association of Summer Camps and Summer Learning, it doesn't have to be school-based enrichment. It can be sport camps. It can be arts-based camps. It can be STEM camps. It can be literacy camps, or it can be like your traditional summer school. And in those examples, what matters to make a difference is duration and dosage, not necessarily what they're doing. That definitely plays a quality factor, but also it's really about how long and how much. One of our sister CSCs did a recent study of their summer programs that they funded, and what they determined was the kids who participated did better than the kids who don't, and the kids who participated more did better than the kids who participated less. It's not rocket science, but this is duration and dosage. So based on that, we set minimum thresholds. You had to do, I think it was 6 weeks or more, six hours a day or more. And we embedded our feeding component into it.
4 days a week.
Oh yeah, and for at least 4 days a week. for the duration of the entire camp. The intent was that you're serving the same child. It may be that you have 6 weeks of summer camp that you're providing, but you're doing 2-week clusters here, 2-week clusters there. That was not acceptable. The intent is the same child for 6 weeks or more, for 6 hours a day or more for at least 4 days a week. That's what the standards suggest will help you impact summer slide. So based on that, there were multiple applications that are not listed on this, that didn't meet that threshold. And they were not considered by our evaluation panel. They didn't come do presentations. They didn't do any of that. We were very serious when we said, this is the bar that we're setting. It's not to say that other programs aren't good or 2-week camps aren't fun and they do great things and they provide respite and do other things. That was not the message we were sending. It's that for this outcome, we know very kind of in line with Dr. Van Landingham, if you want to hit an outcome, you have to make sure that the programs that you're funding are implementing with fidelity to hit that outcome. Funding a 2-week program is not in line, according to the research, to get the outcomes that we want. So based on that, what you have in front of you, again, on page 12 and 13, is the de-identified areas. It does have their program focus. So one of the things that we required is that they opt into a very specific program focus. And in addition to doing the resiliency outcomes that we're measuring, because we also know that there's certain social and workforce ready skills that you also gain from participation in camps, that they'll do those measurements for their program focus. If they say they're a literacy camp or a STEM camp, then they also have to be showing outcomes in those areas. Our plan is in the next year's iteration is that we're going to coalesce all of those tools, but as we're growing with the program so that they can grow with us, kind of what the conversation we had before, that we're not expecting them to do something now that they're not prepared to do, and we're providing that capacity support. So that's what you'll see in that first column of program focus. We then had 7 different categories, their organizational profile.
I'm sorry, what is other?
Other is what they got to define it and just say it was something not on the list.
Okay, so it's other.
It was just random.
It didn't
Other.
fall under literacy, STEM, physical, so it's just.
Yeah, they self-selected other.
Okay.
So the organizational profile really looked at their vision, mission. Are they in this space? Do they have experience doing summer camps? Or, are they, a food service entity now doing a summer camp? That was what that was kind of looking at. That was just an example. None of the applications were that, by the way. Proposal narrative. This was sticking with the theme of food, the meat and potatoes of the application, of really looking at what they were going to do and looking at very specific criteria as it relates to evidence-based standards. Staffing plan was to ensure that they had staff available and hitting very specific recommendations on ratios, credentialing, and their staff training profiles to ensure that the instructors that they're bringing in are prepared to deal with students. Evaluation protocol and assessment tool, fairly self-explanatory. Our very favorite, the budget, making sure that things are lining up and making sure that there was no unallowable expenses. So if you see lower scores, sometimes there were unallowable expenses. You'll recall that the council asked us to say no marketing. So those were taken out. The last on the column on this page is community partnerships. Who are their partners that they're coming to the table with? What does that partnership look like? We really wanted to reward collaboration. And then the last one is their presentation. So we invited everyone to come in and do a presentation, and they were able to score that presentation as well. So what you have in front of you is the results of all of those combined, using all of the individual scores from 5 different members of the evaluation panel that aggregated down to give you a total score and then that average percentage. And so you'll come see that in front of you. What we also wanted to provide you, instead of just the scores, is how many children each of the programs are related to their score we're planning to serve. And so that as you're making a decision about a possible cutoff point, you know how many kids will be served by this. Again, this is for unduplicated children. The idea is that they're going to be served the entire summer, not just 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. And then you'll see that rolling total. And then the second to last column is the requested amount. Now, this amount has already gone through the first phase of what we call a budget audit to eliminate if they had made requests for marketing dollars, for example, those have been zeroed out. And the applicants have been informed of that. So what you see here is minus the unallowable expenses. And we have, and there's some instances where applicants are currently being funded for other programs to really look at this issue of supplantation, and to make sure that there's something that's different from what they're doing. So for the most part, that's also been considered. So as you see that rolling, that amount and that rolling total, you'll have an understanding that this is new dollars to serve new kids, with new services for just this summer. Right below that, you will see this kind of idea of options, as Ms. Green said. Looking at setting a threshold of 85% or higher, you'll see whatever the description that you choose, and it doesn't have to be one of these, but we wanted to give them for you, what the total number of programs would be that were funded at that level, how many children are expected to be served, what the total investment is, and then that last column you'll see is that plus or minus on the budget. Now, that budget was based on the portion of the total of 1.8 for summer being invested. It's not all there because remember we have a youth employment program that you approved, and we have a couple of other things that are out there for summer. So this is it's a $1.39 million investment roughly. So that's what you'll see for that basis of what the current budget is for this particular program.
You said 1.39?
Yes, I believe it's one. Yeah, I think
That's the budget for the summer, 1.39.
for this
these
particular
programs.
summer enrichment for this.
1.39.
That is correct. So that's what you'll kind of see of decisions that you might make. So option one was looking at if they scored an 85% or higher. I think that the first three options are self-explanatory in terms of what set that score at. Option 4 is what we call a natural break while maximizing the budget, meaning where was there a break in scores that would but without going over the budget, and that would take you down to row I, which is you'll see that there's kind of a break at the 78.1 and the 75.8. So there's kind of a little bit of a natural break in the scores, meaning that there wasn't a difference of a 0.2 or a 0.5, which always gets a little hairy, especially when you're publishing these.
Yeah.
A natural break without exhausting the current budget. And then the last one was if you just wanted to fund where you spent the entire budget and where that could take you to. And that would take you up to row K.
Thank you very much for that. All right, real quick question. I see your Mr. Mitchell. Look at the budget line for me, please. And I see where you have explain to me the negative 232.
Sure. If you chose to go at 75% or higher,
Yes.
Which would technically take you to through row L, that would go over the allotted 1.39 by 232,000.
I get it. Okay, now I understand. Okay.
So you have the option to do whatever you want. So I just want to be clear, but as we set it up, that's what I was asked for.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, Mr. Mitchell, then we'll go to Judge Mill.
First of all, Holly, Sika, and all those involved in this, thank you, because no matter what we vote on, I know we are funding better programs, and I'm guessing to Dr. Van Landingham's comments, by funding better programs that do it right, we will achieve better outcomes. And so I applaud you for taking off of the list for consideration those that didn't commit to the 6 weeks. I also think it's important that we sort of understand that this 6 weeks, as you look down this list, talking about $3,000 a child, which is you know, it's real money and these are really good opportunities. Again, I know that I could have found the names, but I purposely stuck to this because I kind of like. Part of me likes not knowing, part of me kind of would like to know, just because if somebody yells at me for funding something, I'm like, well, I don't know. And then you're like, well, is that your job? But I like, in the end, I come down on the side of where we are. The one thing though that I didn't know, and this does matter to me, in terms of the credibility of the evaluators. Who are the evaluators and do we have a little, like just a snippet on their background?
And if I may, I also, before I continue, it's not 1.39, it's 1.49. The technical number is 1484602. Sorry, I was like, as soon as I said that, I remembered I went back and I was like, wait, no, I forgot this other thing that we had in there. So please allow me that opportunity. 1.49, not 39. Okay, so I am the first individual, the last name is just totally blank on me. Amy Grissom, thank you. Amy Grissom, she is the executive director for a local nonprofit agency for the Florida, statewide agency for the Florida Agency for the Blind. So a special needs organization working statewide and bringing a lot of wealth and experience to that. Prior to her role as executive director, she actually worked for the State Department doing procurement work. And so serving as evaluator, designing evaluations. The second individual was a gentleman by the name of Eric Rawls from FSU. And so he's also been very much involved with looking at community impact programs, designing procurements, writing grants, helping different organizations write grants from FSU. The third evaluator was Miss Kenyatta Rosier. She is from FAMU. In this kind of similar role, but within very different departments. From Mr. Rawls, that expertise that she brings. She was also very instrumental in actually running youth programming for older youth. She was very instrumental in her Republic Lemonade Day. So she knows the ins and outs of running these local programs. The fourth evaluator was Mr. Robert Blackledge. He is the former CEO of Domi Station, a past applicant for a program, and is currently the executive director of the Institute for Nonprofit Innovation and Excellence, and serves as one of our capacity building partners. So he knew the application very intently and what was expected of the application. And then the fifth and final evaluator was Ms. Tasha Weinstein. She is the Director of Community Engagement and Education for WFSU. All of them have some experience serving a variety of different kids, if you will. And how most of them were recruited is actually through our open application. In this instance, we were able to find partners by the ones who raised their hand to volunteer. And when we chose them to serve in their different capacity, ensuring that they all brought something different to the table.
And then just one final point. Thank you, Holly. The budget, the 1.4 whatever the total number is based on. There's no real science behind that, except that that's sort of what we agreed on in general terms as a percentage that we could spend. Certainly, if it was the will of the council, we could spend more. Certainly, if it's the will of the council, we could spend less. I love the fact that we raise the bar, and each year we keep getting better. And I am a big believer in, despite the fact there's, the difference between 80% and then taking the natural break. I like the fact that we are, as long as we're doing this blind, also coming up with a random percentage, the same way we did the random percentage for budget. And I like the 80%. I think that that is a good target. I hope it gets even stronger as we move forward. And that's just my comment.
Is that a motion?
Yeah,
I will make that motion. I didn't want to, yes, you know what? How about a motion that we go with option number 2, which is 80% or higher and serving 666 kids.
I'll second the option. 80% seems to be in an academic standard, it's B, maybe a low B, but it's still a B. I think we're wanting to look at A and B programs, right?
raise it so far. Okay, all right, so we have a motion on the table from Mr. Mitchell, not Mr. Cummings, Mr. Mitchell, and we have a second by Mr. O'Brien for us to accept option number 2, where we are doing 80 or more, which will be the top 8 options that are on the table. So with that, let's see.
Discussion.
Then we're gonna go to discussion. Yes, ma'am. All right, yes. So we're open for discussion.
Yeah, I was just wanted to ask a question. Option 3, I think Holly mentioned in on my paper. It shows that if we look at option 3, 75% or higher, we would be in a deficit of 232,000, but I think Mr. Mitchell said it's just a matter of budgeting. Right. But this is the only thing I was looking at is if we did option 3, we're engaging 300 more children than if we did option 2. And then my question is, we've been talking about accountability and measurement outcomes of the summer programs. Are they set up to measure what we do, what they do during the summer?
Yes.
We're moving the needle, what have you, engaging children. Okay.
Yes, and then we will be using the progress monitoring. So I think it's P3.
Mhm.
Or no, we wouldn't be using that because now they're getting ready to change that again. But we do have instruments, measurement
Oh,
instruments
awesome.
that are required to be used with the programs that you all award.
A little bit more scrutiny this summer is
This summer.
expected than what we did this past summer. That's the idea, is to grow the level of accountability each year as we move forward.
And then my last real quick question is, we've got the various options. Staff recommending option 2 after actually looking specifically at the various programs, looking at the number of children that would be engaged, or you're not making a recommendation?
So we weren't making a recommendation. However, since you asked the question, I have gone on record when we've done the funding the last 2 summers.
Mhm.
And we have really wanted to elevate so that we can ensure that we're giving quality services. So if I had to give a recommendation, it would be option 2.
Okay.
I do have a question for Holly before we move forward. Holly, for option 2, you said would be 12 programs, and I'm assuming that's the top 12, is that?
Option 2 is
I'm
8
sorry.
programs.
Option 3 is 12
That
programs.
is correct. And
It's
then-
not necessarily the top 12 programs though, right? The top 12 on the list?
No, in
No,
this
maybe the top
one, it was 100.
Yeah, just go right down the line.
Okay,
Just adds
so
up.
so that would take me to row M, is that correct? Which isn't quite at 70.
No, it's not,
It's right at the top of row M.
it doesn't go through, it's not ABC.
It would be
It's not.
through L.
It's not ordered by alphabet, so you.
No, it is.
Yeah,
It would be
it is.
through row L. You'll see that there's a break. So it would include row L, which is 75.3.
But not M.
74.4 rounds down to 74, not 75. So M through
So it's 11, not 12 programs.
No, it's 12.
One, two, three. And so M is not 75.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I'm so sorry. It is 11 programs.
Right, okay, that's why.
That's why you're a pharmacist.
Yeah, right.
You gotta get those numbers right.
I got to.
But the
It
amount,
still is the 906 and the 1.7.
Still not.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's just a-
my bad. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so
No,
thank
it's still
you,
there.
thank you for that. I just kept on looking, it's like, that's not right. It's
No, no,
not
you're
quite
right, it's still
75%.
906, so it is, yes, it would be 11 programs, 906 children at the 1.7.
So it's still 906.
And then there's the halfway between that, it is what that kind of option 4, which is maximum, it's hitting that 80%, but then it's going to that next national break and without going over your budget.
Right. Can I ask one more question, as long as we're in discussion? Holly, let's say that we go with option 2 and there's 666 spots open. For a parent to enroll their child, they're basically committing to 6 weeks, 4 days, 6 hours, whatever so they have to commit to that.
That is correct. And
okay.
they did that this past summer as well. So how the slots were for each of the programs, it's if you commit to the program, you're committing. Now, well, does a family 100% have to use every single day? Probably not. I think our threshold is around 80%.
They're like my children. Yeah.
And most of these programs are going to be closed for the week of July 4th.
Yeah, or at least a few days.
At
Yeah.
least a few days, yeah.
Got it.
So there's right, but yes, that is a commitment.
Okay.
General counsel's trying to say.
I am, if I'm so very sorry to derail the conversation, but could I ask a question about the blind applicant? What the purpose of having the applicants be anonymous?
Yeah, so I'll answer that. So technically, they're only anonymous for this exercise. They were published on the website with their scores in alphabetical order. We only did this, there's no other way for me to say it, so that our council is looking at the area and the scores versus the names of the programs.
Right.
That being said, though, the information is widely available.
Political safeguard.
Without the names of the applicants, how can individual board members know whether they're casting a vote in violation of the ethics laws, which would prevent them from voting on a matter that accrues to the benefit of an organization they have a relationship with?
Right. Now, that is
Great
true.
point.
But
We
we
did
don't
try to
know.
look through.
I mean, if we don't know,
I'm concerned that this is creating an artifice, like a way to get around that.
Oh, that's
shield
not what
them.
we were trying
No,
to do.
no,
But we can, no, but we can show you the list with the name. Now,
Flash.
before we vote.
Okay.
I'm getting that.
In the meantime,
It's a very good point.
next meeting,
Yeah.
I'm glad to look further into this, but I'm concerned, I don't want board members to inadvertently incur an ethics
Yeah.
issue.
You know what? I am really glad that you said it because I'm like, who's he come up with that? They know exactly. I feel pretty comfortable that I'm not gonna have a conflict, but
I will tell you, when we looked at the programs, we went and looked at registered date, we looked at all of those different things to try to ensure that we didn't see any obvious ones. So I just want the public to know, we were just trying to be objective.
but I believe that they were available.
based on
But to your
merit
point,
and not
yeah.
based on,
So let's
oh,
look
I
at
know this
the
organization. I
We
thought
can
we
show
just
you.
liked it.
8 and the option 2.
So I'm just gonna pull,
Oh, my.
I'm gonna just pull up, okay, so I wanna be very clear that the 1 through 16 here is not the same as A through P on your list. Oh.
Can you give us A through P?
You see.
I'm expanding it. Make it bigger. Okay,
Bigger.
so we have, this is
Bigger.
in alphabetical order, we have Bethel Christian Academy, Boys and Girls Club of the Big Bend, Brownsville Preparatory Institute, Citizens for a Sustainable Future, Creative Minds Solutions, Diamonds in the Rough Sports Education Entertainment, Inc., FAMU DRS, Franklin Academy, the Institute for Music Business, Kingdom Life Preparatory Academy, Omega Lamplighters, Reach One Youth Organization, the Foundation for Leon County Schools, the Project Bridge, Inc., Tallahassee Nights Live Performing Arts Foundation, and Young Engineers Tallahassee.
So Holly, let me ask that we do this. If you can pull up the Excel spreadsheet, we can sort it by highest score to lowest score, and
Well, I
then
can
they
just
develop
say-
the name.
I have
No
none.
conflict with.
I have no conflicts with
I think that
any
was the idea, is that they needed
I
to.
don't have-
Oh, okay,
Right.
okay.
I don't have a conflict.
Yeah, we don't
with
hear
any.
any conflict. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know which one's there, but I don't have a conflict.
And I
with
just, I just need to say on the record, I said before that, I have been on the board of Bethel, well, no, I haven't, not Bethel Christian.
Not the
Bethel
Not
The Empowerment Foundation.
But I'm just a member of Bethel
Yeah.
Baptist,
And I-
it's an umbrella, agency, but it's not
But they
I
are,
don't have a conflict.
and they are their own 50, like they are,
There's own 501.
they are separate. I mean, there's clearly a relationship, but they
Right.
are separate and registered in Sunbiz separately.
Right.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that
So
forward.
does that
Thank you.
kind of make us feel better?
Does that help? Okay.
Yeah, that-
Okay, any other
Just real,
discussion, please?
real fast, and y'all know I'm on my soapbox
Yes.
here. I'm just looking at these numbers and I see the budget and I know we're flexible. But I'm looking at if we choose option 3, we serve approximately 50% more children during the summer. Option 2, we serve 600 and something. If we go to option 3, we serve close to 1,000 children. All of those scores are 75 and above, which we have traditionally funded programs with 75 and above. So what I'd like to do, might not be second, but for the record, I'd like to.
Try again.
Didn't hear me?
That was very.
I'd like to make, I'd like to amend, no, not amend. Substitute motion, I think what I have to do. That we adopt option 3 that would serve close to 1,000 children. That's my motion. I move that we adopt option 3.
And so we need a second, right?
Yeah, I would need a second.
I need a second. Do we hear a second for option 3?
I would second a motion from the standpoint of discussion, get to discussion.
Okay.
Because I was, we put option 5, but I want to stay with the budget, but I can second the motion.
Okay, so we have a second motion. So now the motion on the table is for option 3, which is 75% or higher, which will be the top 11 organizations on the list.
So may I
please.
just offer,
Yes.
so once we get through this and get through SIPs, we also have a proposal in your packet to serve camps for children with special needs. The proposed amount is about $375,000. So I want you to be aware of that information as you're making this decision, because depending on what choice you choose, you could be at $2 million, which again is a number, but I just want to make sure you have all the information before you make your decision.
So here's my question. Our original budget of 1.49, that encompasses these proposals and the ones for special needs, was that?
No.
Was it the subsequent? Okay. I
The
just wanted to
whole
clarify.
1.7 that was approved in our budget encompasses summer programming and the apprenticeship program. So once you approve the apprenticeship program, that left us with 1.49, 1.4 for summer programming. For special needs, we would pull that 375,000 from the 3 million in new programming money that has not been assigned to anyone. If you remember, when we did the budget, we had continuation programming, and then we had $3 million that would be assigned to whatever programming you wanted. At this point, because you chose kindergarten readiness as your focus, we would be looking at the kindergarten readiness stuff that we already had in there, and then that money. So if you approve special needs, we'll take 375 out of that and still leave a little over $4 million.
So let's
Thank
go ahead. So, oh, Mr. Richard, I did not see you.
Yeah, thank you. Just for the discussion of the substitute motion. So with each one of these votes, there's sort of two sides of me. One is my heart, which is leaning with Commissioner Cummings, because I think to myself, 240 more children, that's a great thing. There's another side of me that is more the Dr. Van Landingham side of me, and that is don't be tricked by your heart. Go for the very best and targeted and kind of, and it's hard. It's part of the reason why when I sometimes vote against a program, or don't vote in favor of a program that comes before us as a council, I end up reaching out to that program and writing a personal check because my heart is there. My heart's here, but my Dr. Van Landingham side of my brain is overriding it. And I think to myself, heck, if we can get 666 kids in a program, rocking along for 6 weeks, and we see real results of those 666, I've said all along, I can't wait to make the motion that we raise the millage to 0.5 because then we have more money to spend. I just want to get to the point where we really understand what we're doing. And so I appreciate Commissioner Cummings's substitute motion. I just can't support it. It probably more because of timing of Dr. Van Landingham being hurt than anything, but
It's raising the bar.
Yeah, so can I comment?
Conversation.
I totally understand what you're saying, Paul, because I definitely believe in raising the bar, and I'm really excited about what I've heard Holly say. What bothers me though is it's a 5% difference. You know, to me, that's not a big change. So if we were looking at 80%, 60%, no,
Right.
you know, and if we were even at 70%, I will say no. What is making me tip towards option 3 is that it's 75. And I feel that for 5%, I feel confident enough that I want those other 300 kids, but that 5% difference, that's a difference between those kids being in a program that's going to keep them on track for next year. And so, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. And I want next year for a lot more to be in that 80%. But I think that because the percentage is so low, I think we can have a significant impact on 300 more kids for the summer for a small percentage point. If it was a much larger spread, I would be right there with you. But I think my heart is saying that's a small enough difference in that percentage, but the amount of children that are going to be served, to me, that's worth investing in them for that summer to prevent that from happening. Because at the end of the summer, those 300 kids would have benefited, even though that program did not score quite as high. 75%, you're still going to pass my class. You are.
Yeah, so, Madam Chair, and I appreciate that, but it's really 82% is, I think 81 point something was where the lowest of option 2 hit. And so I've sat on one of these evaluation teams and I sit there and I think I don't want to get caught up in this number game because yeah, you gotta rank them by numbers, but I don't know that the evaluators were looking at. I think they were just kind of grading it. I don't think they were they were grading it based on everything they read, and I still think that
That's all we have. I mean, that's
Right.
all we have. And it's 300 kids. I mean, that's all.
No, it isn't. It's 240. I can do real good.
Okay.
And it's not that 240 kids don't matter, but we're talking about 666 kids going into a program for 6 weeks. And I know there's more requests coming. Again, if we were just here to fund summer program and we had this much money and the money wasn't going to be rolled over into other programs where that 80% versus 79% would have a much bigger impact, then I'd be with you. But I'm really, I mean, look, you let me have my.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much. All right, any other discussions before we go to a vote? Okay, So as of right, Mr.
No,
Okay, so as of right now, the option, if we have a substitute proposal on the, or substitute option on the table, let's hear public comment. Ms. Clay, do we have any public comments?
Yes, public comment, Mr. John Sheets.
Thank you.
Welcome, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Awesome, we'd love to hear your comments. Yes, sir.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I first want to say that this is was impressive evaluators and this is impressive data that's very useful. So I want to thank the staff. The only things I thought, I enjoyed listening to the commentary. The two things I wanted to point out were if you do per capita child served, when you go to that number is significantly higher. It's actually higher than your highest ranked program. And I think that's significant. And also, we don't really know what other is, at least that was not clear to me. I started to have several questions once we got below I. So although I agree with the chair's point very much that I think it's great that you want to serve more children, I also firmly believe that this will have a trickle down effect for years to come. If you have the bar higher, then you got better applicants this year, you'll get better applicants this year. And I think that's something to keep in mind. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. All right. So I think we are now ready for a vote. Oh, you have another one?
Yes, public comment, Mr. Darius Baker.
Mr. Baker, welcome.
How are you? My
Hi.
name is Darius Baker. I am the executive director of Tallahassee Heights Live Performing Arts Foundation. Thank you guys so much for all of you've done. It's really a tedious process to actually go through this evaluation. But from my personal aspect, being with TNL Performing Arts Center, I see the results of these kids. And I think that when you put an aspect on a kid as far as 240, I don't care if it's 5, every last kid is valuable. And you have a lot of kids during the summer who would not be able to come into to get the training and get the supervision that we provide at TNL. And I'm quite sure there's others on the list as well, if they weren't funded. So when you look at a difference of 3, 4, 5%, which is not really that major, I'm all up for standards. You got to have a standard in order to move forward in life. But this, in this particular aspect, when it equates to 240 kids, it's a lot of kids. That's a lot of kids that otherwise may not be anywhere. I mean, they don't have, I see it, I saw it, being able to be afforded the opportunity to serve the kids last summer and do a great job and get a actual document saying that we did what we were supposed to do. And I can truly say over 50% of those kids would not have been able to be in our program if it wasn't funded and if it wasn't for CSC. So I just want to just put that on your mind, but I'm all up for standards. But when it equates to 240 kids, you got to think, where would they go? Where would they go? Where would they go? And I believe you guys stressed last year about being diverse. You have recreational programs, STEM, literacy, and the arts, and what I provide. This will give them opportunity to actually get that. So I thank you guys so much for your time.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. Ms. Clay, do we have any more public comments?
There's no.
We have no more public comments. All right, so let's move forward. Thank you. All right, let's go to a roll call vote on Ms. Cummings' motion right now for option number 3, and then we'll see where we land with that.
Judge Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
No.
Commissioner Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell,
No.
Dr. Glenn.
Yes. All right, so I think option 3 has passed. All right, so that's where we are right now. For option 3 for summer enrichment, this was a great conversation, guys. Thanks for the discussion.
So just so I'm clear, we're $232,000 over the budget that we set for summer.
Right, so the total,
Before anything else more comes forward.
right, so at this point, we are at we'll do the, what do you call that? Verification of the budget, but we are at $1,716,951.48.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's move forward. All right, where are we?
We are on number 9.
Number 9 is summer funding for special needs. All right, Ms. Green.
Yes, so starting on page 13 is a proposal to fund for some summer programming for children with special needs. While the best practice says that programming should be inclusive and have children with special needs integrated with children who do not have special needs. And we also allowed for that in our summer programming RFP, whereby extra points could be awarded, depending on the number of children that you served with special needs. And we would allow for a higher cost per child for those children with special needs. We have heard repeatedly that parents and caregivers say that there just isn't enough opportunity for their children with special needs to participate in programming that not only connects them with other children, but allows for some respite and re-energizing and reinvigorating for those caregivers. So there is research to support the proposal that we have provided. And so you will see before you on page 13, a proposal to provide scholarships to programs that specifically serve children with special needs. All of the eligibility criteria is there. There will be an application process, not quite as detailed as this one, because the outcomes for this really is respite and connectivity. So we are proposing that for the 4-month period, May, June, July, and August, $375,000, allowing programs to apply for up to $75,000 to cover students to attend their programs. If they don't apply for that exact amount, we could fund more than 5 programs. But right now, this would cover 5 programs to help have those special needs children be able to attend camp.
And how many do we think would be covered by those 5 programs?
So right now, it is estimated that 1 in 4 children in Leon County has special needs. So it would depend on the cost per child. We did our summer camps at $300 per child per week at 6 weeks. So we're probably estimating what?
Well, really, most of the children that participate in these don't do a 6-week stint. So that's also very different.
Right.
This idea of duration and dosage is not here. The objective here is connectivity and respite and having opportunity. So it's not comparing apples to
We have a
apples.
cost per child for whatever, just in
So
aggregate.
it is at least double. It is at least double, but then it depends upon how many weeks they participate.
And so we did this one, to your point, the reason why we can't give you an answer is because we did this one specifically at an amount per program. So when they apply, they will have to apply and show us how much it would cost per child to get up to whatever amount it is, but 75. And then you all as a council can decide, well, gosh, if 75 is only going to cover 4 kids, I don't know that I want to go with that camp. I might want to go with a camp where 75 would cover 100 kids because of the duration. So when they give the narrative, as well as the cost per child, as well as the duration of a typical participation of a child, you will be able to compare apples to quinces. Not apples to oranges, but apples.
Research does say, so the 300 that we did for like typical programs is also based on research for this population. It could be anywhere from $600 to $1,000 per child per week. But there are summer camp programs that do 24-hour care, for example, for a whole week, which their costs are clearly more. So, but that would be sort of application. We would have all of that before you.
So if you do that math, you're looking at probably somewhere low end 50, probably high end 80 for the 375.
For each week. And so then it comes down, right, but that's what I'm saying, but then it comes down to if one program's only 2 weeks long and another program 6 weeks long, that program might serve more than that program. So we did try to dice it, but until we see the applications, that's why we didn't put it before you, because it's too hard to make that assumption. Because it's the unduplicate.
Madam Chair, I just want to commend our executive director and our staff for this for this proposal for request for proposal, RFP to be submitted. Because I think it demonstrates that from a holistic standpoint, we are concerned about all of our children, even though we have got certain targeted areas. I'm just proud that we're including special needs children because we don't want to be perceived as discriminatory as for the services we provide to our children. So I move that we accept the report and that we allow staff to submit this proposal for special needs children for summer funding.
So I have a motion on the table by Commissioner Cummings that we accept this proposal. Do I hear a second?
I'm gonna second it for purposes because I have a question. I was trying to get in front of Mr. Cummings. What is the definition of a child with special needs if 1 in 4 have a special need?
There's a definition here, it's very
Right.
broad.
The very kind of broad one is a special need or a disability to include autism or autism-related disorders. It could also include intellectual disabilities, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, Prader-Willis syndrome. There's several others that is also included in there. So it's anything from autism to very debilitating physical disabilities as well
So, okay, so I read that 1 in 4 children.
in our community. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly it's a pretty broad definition.
25% of our nation's population, and even in that translates into almost every community, have some form of disability. That could be a qualifying disability for, say, a 504.
You're right.
Dyslexia could be one.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I know when I read this and then I see, because I'm sort of familiar with disability, generally speaking, learning disabilities. Not saying that the population you just read would also have learning disabilities.
Yeah, and intellectual disability would include like dyslexia, for example, or convergence insufficiency, for example, which most people have never heard of, but my kid has it, so. Convergence insufficiency. It's a learning disability, 504. These are anything that would be eligible for an IEP or a 504 plan.
This is, and I appreciate the answers, and I'm sticking with my second. I'm gonna tell you that that was the point I was trying to make in, again, to the gentleman's comment that not every child, well, there were 1,400 children. That was, I mean, I'm gonna tell you that was a blow to me personally. I know that he didn't mean it that way, but it's like, yeah, I know every child counts. And every one of these children that we're gonna serve with this 375,000 counts. But we have a budget, and a budget is important. We set our standard at the beginning of the year. We're blowing through this budget, but we're blowing through it. And if I don't second and vote for Commissioner Cummings' motion, we're doing it at the expense of kids that are often overlooked. And so I can't not vote for this. I was fully expecting to vote for it and trying to stay within reasonable budget of serving kids in the summertime. So thank you for allowing me to
Absolutely.
jump on my soapbox, and I am still supportive of Commissioner Cummings' motion.
And I just want to comment, and I hear your comment, and I understand how you feel about the last vote. But one thing that I've often heard from you, especially Mr. Mitchell, is that we can determine how we want to spend this budget. And I understand that, and I appreciate that, because I believe in staying in the lines, I really do. But I honestly felt that for that percentage and the dollars of money that we had allocated, we could serve those children for this summer, because that is such a critical time, especially after COVID. And so, I'm just saying, since we have the budgetary discretionary, if we just said, if we don't, if we can't cross this line at all, then we're not going to be able to spend these other programs then I would understand that. But we do have some discretionary, and I felt that for this service and for the things that we needed to do for these children, this was an important enough vote. So I just wanted to comment because I understand how you feel.
$600,000. So, I mean, it's just, okay. I mean, I
So
gotcha.
I understand, and I appreciate it. I just wanted an opportunity to comment on that too. So thank you. Okay, so we do,
Comment.
comment, Mr. Bryant, please.
I have to say this too. We can only spend each dollar once. Once it's spent, we can't take it back.
Correct.
And every dollar that we spend on something else is a dollar that we can't spend on a different program. So, you know, these are trade-offs, and that's what we have to understand. These are trade-offs that we're making.
And I completely agree with you. And for
Those
me,
dollars could have been spent on other kids doing other things. And I do think that one thing, and this is, we call ourselves a council for the benefit of the children, and we tell ourselves we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Let's stay on that track, because my biggest fear coming into this is that we're going to become the funder for all things for all people, and we're going to dilute the dollars, and we're not going to make the impact that we need to make. And so every time we spend a dollar, we need to remember that that's a dollar we can't spend somewhere else.
absolutely. And I believe that we spent those dollars on those 240 kids. And I think that that's worth the budget. And I'm not going to sit here and argue my position, but honestly, I felt as if that was worth the money. Okay, so I mean, the money's spent. So, and we have to make some hard decisions, and that was just one of them today. All right, thank you very much. All right. Any other discussion items before we vote on this proposal? No? Okay, all right. So it's, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
There is no public.
Okay, no public comments. All right, thank you very much. Okay. So now let's take a vote on moving forward with approving this special needs proposal. Ms. Klein?
Judge Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Dr. Glenn.
Yes. All right, the motion is passed, so thank you very much, and we will move forward with the special needs proposal. Thank you very much. All right, it is time now for SIPs, so.
So you have in front of you somewhere. The applications on page 15 for SIPs, you will see that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 applications there. You see the categories, the impact areas, as well as the amounts requested, those recommended for funding, and those to consider for funding. You also see the rolling totals there. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. McPhail just to do a quick overview, and then you guys can make a consideration.
So very, very quickly, this was the lowest number of applications that we received. I think I stated in the email from Ms. Green, there were 5 additional applications that were deemed ineligible for a variety of reasons. And so I just want to be very clear that that what's before you was all then reviewed, and all of these were deemed eligible. There is the next application period does open on April 1st. So that those that were deemed ineligible were told that they would have another shot, if you will, at the next round. We also just, per Councilmember Watts's request last time, we changed the scoring process up just a little bit, and you guys all experienced that when you submitted your scores. So what you see before you is those that received the highest scores recommended for funding, and those that received the lowest scores in just as a consideration for funding. And with that, I'll turn it back to the chair.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I will entertain a motion and a second to how we want to split the funding for SIPs. Oh, that's
Just a
right.
quick question, Holly. I remember going through this. Did every single program that was presented, are they on this list?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, none got taken off.
That you originally reviewed,
Yeah.
that is correct. So how the scores came out with them, that's why we kind of just broke it into the 2. You'll recall that previously we had a category that was not recommended right now. And per Councilmember Watts at the last discussion of this said to break it up a little bit differently. And so that's what you have here.
Well, for the purpose of moving this forward, I will make a motion to accept all of those that are listed in the recommended for funding.
I'll second it.
All right, so we have a motion on the table for all of the recommended for funding, second by Mr. Bryan, a second by Mr. Mitchell. So we're open for any discussion questions now. Any discussions? Judge Miller, any questions, any discussion items?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, yeah, one question I have was,
Please.
the recommended for funding is one that was unanimously everybody recommended.
So it's not unanimous.
Let us do that exercise. What I'm saying is that, yeah, recommend for funding, who's making the recommendation?
So that would be based on the highest scores that were received. So the choices were recommended, consider, or not right now for each of them. We then tallied the scores and there was a very clear break between the two, and no one really at the very bottom after you compiled everybody's scores. That's why you don't see a not recommended at this time, as opposed to just not recommended. So that this kind of consider for funding are those that were somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
And the recommended for funding, it's not, I want to be very clear, it's not unanimous. That they all received the highest score from everybody. It's not unanimous, but none of them had a 0. I'll put it that way.
Maybe I wasn't clear on my question. It was when we did the exercise, you had us to do the individual exercise.
That is
Are those results reflected in?
correct.
Yeah.
So the highest scores from all of those recommended from you guys, that you either scored a recommended or a considered, went to the top. And so that there's like a 3-point difference between all of the 5 that are listed at the top. Is that 5? Yeah, 5. And then there's a break, a larger break for the 4 at the bottom.
Okay.
But no one, I want to be very clear that no one was so far at the bottom that they were in like a not recommended at all type of situation.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so hearing no other discussion, I think we can now go to public comment.
We do not have any public comment.
No public comment. All right, so the motion on the table right now is for us to fund all of the recommended items. So I think we can go to vote, Ms. Clay.
Judge Miller,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Commissioner Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes.
Dr. Glenn.
Yes. All right, so we're moving forward. Thank you very much with funding for the recommended for funding category. Thank you very much, Ms. Whitfield, for reviewing that for us. Okay, moving forward. All right, we're on agenda item number 11, sorry. It is time for us to talk about the outline. This is an outline that the staff has put forward for one of our priority areas, kindergarten readiness plan. So I'm going to turn over to you, Ms. Green.
Yes, so what you have in front of you is a set of concept papers for programs that we believe would be funded under the recommendations that you provided to us at the last meeting. So if you look at your framework, it's the framework that has the highlights. You directed us to look at concepts for funding underneath childcare and early education programs, early childhood curriculum interventions, and supports for expecting parents and families with young children. You are not being asked to make any decisions this evening, but rather take this information, review it, provide us with your comments. We will take that and then create statements of work, which we will email out to you, similar to what we did with the FRC contract, so that you can look at that, provide us with your input, and in April, we will bring you back those scopes of work for you to make decisions on the procurement process.
Okay, so if I'm hearing this properly, the request is for us to review the outline that's on pages 17 through 20.
Yes.
Dr. Glenn, we were just given homework.
Yeah, we are. I know, that's exactly what that sounds like.
17 through 28.
It's 17 through
Taking
28.
this with us.
Yes,
You got it electronic.
okay. We're to review this,
Yeah.
provide our feedback and our comments, and you all gave us a due date.
We will.
Okay,
Holly will remind us.
all right. And then
you
y'all will
a
take
gentle reminder.
our feedback.
Gentle reminders, yes.
All right, and then you all will take that feedback, draft proposals,
Yes.
and then those proposals will be brought forward to us in April.
They're gonna be sent to you ahead of it.
Okay, absolutely.
So
All
you
right.
have a time to really dive into them and provide us your comments,
Okay,
so that when we bring them to you in April, they are almost right there.
okay. All right, thank you very much.
So yes, homework.
Is everybody
And you
clear?
can't say the dog ate it.
All right, Thank you very much. I wish Rocky was here. I think he would be really excited about us moving forward, you know, kindergarten rate. Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, I definitely, yeah.
Okay, all right, so thank you very much for that. All right, so guys, we're actually wrapping up. So agenda item number 12. So for future council meetings, we have a finance and budget committee meeting on April Fool's Day. April the 1st at 5 o'clock. Then our next governing council meeting will be on Thursday, April 18th at 4 p.m. And the agenda items that are currently on that agenda are to talk about fiscal year 2023, the financial audit report, rebound and recovery program updates, the kindergarten readiness procurements, which will be drafted based on our feedback, the emergency funding request policy proposal. Ms. Cummings, at your request, we will have an opportunity to approve that, and then to get a report from the finance and budget committee members. That's currently all that we have for the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can we add just even if it's very brief, an update on the FRC activities?
Absolutely.
So that contract doesn't actually start till April 1st, so we don't have a
Okay,
whole
well, that
lot.
might be a little early, but I will rescind that.
Yeah.
Well, we need to put it on the next agenda.
So the contract will be signed and the start date is April 1st. So by the time we have the June meeting, we can at least just tell you what has happened as far as the timeline and the sky. Absolutely.
Okay, all right, any member comments at this time?
Go ahead.
I just wanna really commend all of you all, the members and also staff that work at the Family Resource Center. Unfortunately, because of my it was at work, I couldn't attend any of those meetings. I felt bad. I felt walking in today like the prodigal son. So I had done all this hard work and I was not
You're leaving with homework though.
which is
You're leaving with homework though. So.
I do want to commend everyone. I appreciate how much behind the scenes. I tried to watch some of the meetings, but just commend all of you all for the work that was put there. I do the seriousness and commitment of that amount of money, the hesitancy, and the discussions that we had to do. So.
Thank you, of course. Thank you very much for that. Ms. Richard.
Yeah, and it's Mr. Rowe, just in case for some reason you're not here, I want to say this. And sort of the preview of the audit that we got. You'll remember as we were beginning, had auditors come in and make recommendations on how to make the council run cleaner, run better. A lot of what they recommended required our general counsel to produce rules and procedures for us, and you're going to like the results of the audit. And Mr. Rowe, you weren't here as part of our budget committee meeting earlier in the week, but I said it then, and I want to say it now. We owe you a debt of gratitude for what you did to get us to the point where we adopted procedures. And so I say thank you to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right. Any other comments? All right, everybody, it is now 6:04 p.m. and our meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
What's 5:45?